That day, I came home early. Not for any big reason, just to cancel meeting downtown and a bit of extra time before an evening fundraiser I was half dreading anyway. Thought I'd beat the traffic, grab a change of clothes, maybe even take a quick nap before putting on a smile for another round of social small talk and lukewarm catered chicken. As soon as I opened the front door, something hit me. Not a noise, not a sight. A smell. Sharp. Musky. Definitely not mine. I stopped mid-step, standing still in the foyer with one hand still on the doorknob, trying to place it. It wasn't soap. Not detergent. It smelled like cologne, but not the cheap stuff. It was deep, with a kind of spice to it, like cedarwood or maybe something leathery. Expensive. I don't wear cologne. Jessica always said she liked the way I smelled naturally. Said synthetic scents gave her headaches. So who, or what, was I smelling? That was my first red flag. The kind you try to wave away like it's no big deal. But your gut knows better. I closed the door softly behind me. The house was too quiet. No TV on. No music. Just the low hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the faint buzz of an extractor fan somewhere upstairs. Probably the bathroom. And then, upstairs, the creak of floorboards. Footsteps. Not hurried, not loud, but they were there. Just 2 or 3, followed by a door clicking shut. Not slamming. Clicking. Intentional. I didn't call out to her. I don't even know why. I just stood at the bottom of the stairs for a few moments, listening, my eyes scanning the hall for something that would tell me I was imagining things. And then she appeared. Jessica, standing at the top of the stairs in a haze of steam and silence. Her hair was wet, hanging in damp strands over her shoulders. She had wrapped herself in an oversized t-shirt, gray, faded, clearly worn in. I thought maybe it was mine at first glance, but the print caught my eye. A red and blue logo with blocky letters across the chest that read, Riley's Auto and Tire. It wasn't mine. I've never been to Riley's. I don't even know where it is. She doesn't drive a beater that needs servicing. I handle the maintenance on both our cars. She hesitated just slightly at the top of the stairs when she saw me. Only for half a second, but it was there. Her eyes flicked past me, toward the bathroom door at the end of the hallway. Not long. Just a glance. Like she was making sure it was shut. Like maybe there was something behind it I wasn't supposed to see. Hey, she said, trying for casual. You're home early. I nodded. Yeah, meeting got canceled. Thought I'd come back, change before the event tonight. She forced a smile. Good idea. I was just about to shower. I didn't mention the wet hair. I didn't have to. I'll be downstairs, I said, and walked off without waiting for a response. She didn't follow. I heard her bedroom door close a few seconds later. The rest of the house was spotless, staged almost. Throw pillows perfectly aligned, no dishes in the sink, not a speck of dust on the entryway table. But it didn't feel clean. Something felt, scrubbed, manufactured. I sat on the edge of the couch and listened. The music kicked on upstairs, her usual playlist. Indie folk stuff. Calming, nostalgic. Something she used to play when she was cleaning or reading. Now it felt like a distraction. Like camouflage. A few minutes passed before I climbed the stairs again, quietly, like a ghost trying not to be noticed. The hallway still smelled like that cologne. It was weaker now, but still noticeable. It clung to the air like fog. The bathroom door was open, the extractor fan still running. Inside, everything looked normal at a glance, until I saw the towel. It was bunched on the floor beside the tub. Still damp. A second one was slung over the shower curtain rod, also wet. 2 towels, both used. Jessica rarely used 2 unless she washed her hair. Even then, she always draped hers neatly over the edge of the tub. She hated mess. I picked up the one from the floor. It smelled. Not bad, just foreign. That same cologne. Not faint, either. Strong. Whoever had used it must have applied it recently, maybe even while still damp. I stood in the bathroom for a long time, just holding that towel in my hand, feeling the weight of it. Like it would answer the questions I didn't know how to ask. Eventually, I walked back downstairs. She was sitting on the couch now, hair dry, the Riley's Auto shirt replaced with one of her old sweatshirts. She had the music louder this time. Something upbeat. She looked up at me and smiled again, like nothing was off. You want tea? She asked. I shook my head. Nah, I'm good. She nodded and turned back to her phone. We didn't talk for the rest of the afternoon. She stayed on the couch, half watching some baking show while scrolling social media. I changed clothes, answered some emails, sat in the kitchen for a while pretending to go over notes for the fundraiser. But mostly, I watched her. She never brought up the towel, or the shirt, or the fact that her phone buzzed 3 times, and each time, she turned the screen away from me before glancing at it. I didn't ask. I didn't say anything about the smell. I didn't accuse her of anything. Not because I didn't care, but because something inside me had already started to shut down. The part of me that trusted her was flickering, like a bulb on its last pulse. There's this point in a relationship when the threads start to fray and unravel, not in an explosive way, but silently. Internally, it's not one big fight or a sudden betrayal. It's when you start paying attention to things you never thought twice about. Towels, t-shirts, smells that don't belong. I'd always trusted Jessica. Completely. Blindly. But that day, something shifted. I didn't feel like her husband anymore. I felt like a bystander. An observer in my own life. I wanted to believe I was overthinking it. That maybe the towel had just picked up a scent from the gym bag. That the shirt had been borrowed from a friend. That the footsteps I heard upstairs were hers, and hers alone. That nothing was wrong. But I couldn't make myself believe it. Not fully. So I said nothing. And from that moment forward, I started paying attention. Because when trust breaks, it doesn't shatter with sound. It crumbles in silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside Jessica in our bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it might offer answers. She was facing the other way, curled toward the edge of the mattress, breathing slow and even. If she was pretending to be asleep, she was good at it. Too good. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid. But my body didn't buy it. My chest was tight. My hands were cold. I could feel something wrong pressing down on me, like gravity had doubled overnight. And so I stared at the ceiling and thought. About the shirt. About the cologne. About the second towel. I played it all over in my mind, frame by frame, like it was a scene from a movie I couldn't pause or fast forward. And when my mind got tired of those thoughts, it dug up others, moments I'd ignored or explained away over the past few months. And the more I went over them, the less they made sense. She'd started working out more. That's how it began. Just a new interest in fitness, or so I thought. But her workouts were always late. And long. She'd come back sweaty, but not like someone who'd just been on a treadmill. Her hair would be perfectly tied up, her eyeliner not smudged. One night, she came home still wearing the same makeup she'd put on before leaving, flawless as ever. Said she was at spin class. But she didn't bring a gym bag. No water bottle. No sweat on her clothes. Then there was the laundry. She used to throw everything into the hamper, even her gym clothes. But lately, I'd started noticing missing pieces, sports bras, leggings, tops, that never seemed to go through our wash. Once, I opened the dryer and found only a single towel inside, freshly tumbled. Warm. Nothing else. Why dry one towel? I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I began watching. She used to fall asleep next to me every night. Not always touching. Jessica liked her space, but present. Warm. Real. Over the past few weeks, she'd taken to claiming insomnia. She'd say she couldn't sleep, that she needed to read downstairs, or do some work on her laptop. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to an empty bed, only to find her curled up on the couch, phone in hand, always quick to hide the screen when I came into view. One night, I caught her whispering on the balcony. It was freezing outside, mid-January, and she stood out there barefoot, wrapped in a hoodie, phone pressed to her ear. When I opened the sliding door and asked who she was talking to, she smiled too quickly and said, "Just Maddie." Maddie, her childhood best friend. But Maddie lived in California, and with the time difference, it would have been 2 a.m. for her. Still, I didn't press. Instead, I started keeping mental notes. Times, dates, excuses, and it wasn't just the late nights. It was everything. She stopped wearing the watch I got her for her birthday. Said it didn't match her outfits. She took down the framed photo of us from her desk, the one from our trip to Asheville. I only noticed because I walked past her home office and saw a blank space where it used to sit. When I asked about it, she said she'd moved it upstairs, but I never saw it again. Then came the receipts. I found one in her coat pocket while doing the laundry, a high-end sushi place downtown. The receipt was dated the same night she'd told me she was visiting Maddie, helping her through a tough breakup. I stared at the ink for a long time. 2 entrees, 3 drinks. No sign of a girl's night. I didn't ask about it. I wanted to, But there was a part of me that didn't want to hear whatever story she was going to feed me. A part of me that was more interested in watching the lie take shape than confronting it outright. Something had shifted between us. Something fundamental. We used to talk. Not just small talk, but real conversations. About movies, memories, random observations. The kind of couple that finished each other's sentences. But now, everything was shallow. Surface level. I'd ask how her day was, and she'd say busy without details. I'd tell her something funny that happened at work, and she'd smile, but not laugh. Her eyes would flick back to her phone every few seconds, like she was waiting for something. Or someone. And maybe the worst part, she'd stop touching me. Not just in bed, though that too. We used to hug without thinking. Sit with our legs tangled on the couch. I used to brush her hair behind her ear when we watched movies. Now, every gesture felt like a performance. Her hugs became stiff. Her kisses brief. A mechanical part of the routine. One night, I made dinner. Her favorite. Lemon chicken, roasted vegetables, even her go-to dessert. Those ridiculous mini lava cakes she loved. She was an hour late. When she finally walked in, she looked surprised to see me still waiting at the table. "Oh," she said. "You cooked?" "Yeah," I replied. "Thought we could have a quiet night in." She smiled. "That's sweet. I wish I'd known." I stopped for tacos on the way home. Tacos. She sat down anyway, poked at the food, told me she was full, said she had to get some work done. That night, I watched her type furiously into her laptop. I watched her eyes flick to her phone every few minutes, watched her check the time twice in 1 minute. Then I watched her get up and go to the guest room. Too wired to sleep, she claimed. She used to crawl into my arms on nights like that. Now she just disappeared. This was our routine now. A cold, careful routine. She'd come home late. I'd say nothing. She'd claim to be tired. I'd nod. She'd disappear behind a locked bathroom door, emerge in a t-shirt I didn't recognize, her skin flushed like she'd just been somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. I stopped looking for explanations. Instead, I watched. I watched how she positioned herself when talking to me, always at a slight angle, not quite facing me directly. I watched how she started showering twice a day, always in the evenings, even if she hadn't left the house. I watched how she laughed at texts she wouldn't show me. And I watched how she avoided eye contact when I said, "I love you." Like the words made her itch. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was beyond that. Past sadness, too. I was in that strange, hollow space where clarity lives. And it told me the truth. That something was wrong. That this wasn't just stress or distance or a temporary disconnect. This was something else. Someone else. I didn't have proof yet. No confession. No photos. Just a pile of patterns and gut feelings and quiet red flags. But every instinct I had screamed that something had already happened. Maybe it was still happening. Maybe it never stopped. So I didn't ask. Didn't accuse. Didn't beg for answers. I kept quiet. And I kept watching. Because when love is replaced by suspicion, silence becomes your sharpest P***N. And patience your greatest revenge. The silence became my routine. By that point, I had given up on asking questions. Words had lost their power in our house. They were either deflected, ignored, or twisted into answers that sounded rehearsed, polished like a corporate email. I wasn't dealing with someone caught off guard. Jessica was always prepared. Too prepared. So I changed tactics. I started collecting. It began with the anonymous message. No number. No name. Just a text, sent to my personal phone. A single photo, low quality, but unmistakable in what it showed. Jessica, sitting outside a small cafe, 2 neighborhoods over. Not the kind of place she normally visited. She was laughing, genuinely laughing, with her head tilted toward a man I'd never seen before. He had his arm around her back, hand resting comfortably at her hip. The body language wasn't casual. It was practiced, familiar. The timestamp on the photo was 3 days prior. A Tuesday night. She had told me she was at yoga. I stared at the image for 10 full minutes before I moved. My hand trembled as I zoomed in, trying to find a reflection in the window or a license plate in the background, anything that could be explained. But nothing about it made sense, except the sinking certainty I felt deep in my chest. That night, I didn't mention the photo. I made dinner like usual, sat across from her, listened as she talked about work. She mentioned a last-minute project, a tricky client, a budget meeting that had run over. Her story had no holes, no stammers. If I hadn't seen the picture, I'd have believed her. That's when I realized. I had no way of knowing how many times this had happened, or when it started. The next morning, I took a personal day. Called in, said I wasn't feeling well. Jessica was already gone by the time I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with the photo pulled up again, zooming in on the cafe's name, Mill and Bloom, printed faintly on the napkin beside her latte. I knew the place, not far from where I used to live before we got married. Quaint, quiet. No reason for her to be there unless she wanted to be out of sight. At lunchtime, I drove down there. Parked 2 blocks away, walked in casually, ordered an Americano. While I waited, I struck up a conversation with the barista, young guy, probably college age. I told him I was doing a little project on local small businesses for a design pitch. Asked if they kept security cameras. He said yeah, but only for liability purposes, front and side views. Always running, stored for 7 days. 7 days. I asked if there was any way to review footage from earlier that week, citing a client dispute on behalf of my fictional agency. I wasn't expecting him to say yes, but he did. 15 minutes later, I was sitting in the back room while he pulled up the archived footage from Tuesday. It didn't take long to find her. Jessica walked in at exactly 6:41 p.m., wearing the beige wool coat she said she left at work. The man from the photo was already waiting at the table. She greeted him with a kiss, not on the cheek, but the kind that says, "I've missed you." They stayed for over an hour. Talked. Held hands. Shared a dessert. She laughed. A lot. The way she used to laugh with me. I left the cafe with my hands in my jacket pockets, a pit in my stomach, so heavy I thought it might pull me straight into the pavement. The footage burned in my brain. No ambiguity. No room for doubt. It wasn't emotional confusion. It wasn't a misread friendship. It was a full-on relationship. A second life. Back home, I sat in my car for a long time before going inside. The house looked the same. Nothing was out of place. Our wedding photo still hung by the front door. Her coat, another one, not the beige, hung where she always left it. Everything was normal, except it wasn't. I went to her laptop next. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just something. A file name. A note. Something she'd forgotten to hide. She never shared her password with me, but I'd seen her type it in 100 times. Her late dog's name, followed by our anniversary, in reverse. It worked on the first try. Her email was still logged in. Most of it was benign, work updates, online orders, newsletters. But then I found the folder. Tucked beneath a cluster of project labels, under the name client_notes. Inside were email confirmations. Train tickets, 2 weekends in a row, to a nearby town I'd never heard her mention. Flower orders billed under a name I didn't recognize, sent to a hotel. Hotel bookings that aligned perfectly with the weekends I was out of state visiting my dad. My breathing slowed as I clicked each one. They weren't hidden well. She hadn't even tried to encrypt them. As if the idea of being discovered wasn't even on her radar anymore. That stung more than anything. Not just the betrayal, but the confidence, the arrogance, that she'd never be caught. I looked deeper. Calendar entries marked as strategy calls were booked at strange hours. Her browsing history had been wiped, but a few auto-suggestions lingered. Train schedules, discreet overnight stay, spa couples packages. None of those things were for me. There was no question anymore. I wasn't living in the dark. I had been living in a lie. A curated version of my life, while the real thing unfolded behind closed doors, locked screens, and fake meetings. That night, I said nothing. I watched her eat dinner. I watched her fold laundry. I watched her brush her teeth and smile in the mirror like the world hadn't shifted underneath us. And I smiled back, because now I knew. I didn't need her to admit anything. The photo, the security footage, the travel receipts, the bookings, the emails. Together, they painted a portrait clearer than any words she could offer. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was intentional, deliberate, sustained. A second existence running parallel to mine, built in the shadows while she pretended to sit beside me in the light. I saved everything, copied the emails, downloaded the photo and the security footage, took *TS of each receipt. I created a folder on my desktop titled simply Jessica, Archive. She came up behind me once while I was working on it. Asked what I was doing. Just sorting old photos, I said, keeping my voice level. She kissed the top of my head and went to make tea. That kiss felt like a joke I wasn't in on. Later, I stared at the folder one last time before shutting my laptop. The proof was no longer for me. I didn't need it to convince myself anymore. It was for the next step. And this time, it wouldn't be silence. It would be strategy to be why the time the weekend rolled around. The weight of what I knew no longer felt sharp. It had dulled into something else, a kind of mental pressure, always there, always humming beneath the surface. But I didn't snap. I didn't yell. I didn't give Jessica what she might have expected, the big explosion, the tears, the begging, the self-doubt. Instead, I gave her nothing. We were invited to a friend's birthday party that Saturday. A mutual friend, a college buddy of mine named Greg who Jessica had known for years. I almost didn't go. I thought about staying home, saying I wasn't feeling well, giving her the freedom to go alone. But then I realized, this was an opportunity. Not for confrontation. For confirmation. She asked me that morning if I still wanted to go. Of course, I said. It'll be fun. She smiled, a little too relieved. She wore a black skirt, knee-length, tight enough to draw attention, paired with a deep red blouse that dipped low at the collarbone. She curled her hair the way she used to on our anniversaries, added mascara she hadn't bothered with in weeks. I knew that effort wasn't for me. The party was held at a friend's loft downtown. Casual, loud, full of laughter and cheap cocktails. It should have been fun. It used to be fun. But that night, I watched everything through a different lens. I wasn't the husband anymore. I was the audience. Jessica became the center of a small orbit almost instantly. A younger guy, mid-20s maybe, hair pushed back, confidence unearned, gravitated toward her early on. I didn't catch his name. Didn't need to. He laughed too loud at her jokes, nodded too fast at her stories, leaned in when he spoke like he was trying to catch every word. And Jessica let him. She touched his shoulder when she talked, smiled wide, tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she did when she wanted someone to notice her earrings. She didn't introduce me. They stood by the kitchen island, close. Too close. I stayed on the other side of the room, chatting with old friends, laughing at stories, drinking just enough to dull the edge without blunting the clarity. I kept my eyes open. And I wasn't the only one. People noticed. I caught the glances, quick flickers of confusion, sympathy, awkwardness. One of Greg's friends, Lauren, came over to me at one point and asked, "Hey, everything okay with you two?" I smiled. Couldn't be better. She didn't believe me, but she nodded and walked away. I watched Jessica take a photo with the guy, a full-body *T, their arms slung around each other like they were at a high school reunion. I watched her hand linger just a second too long before letting go. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just cheating behind closed doors anymore. She didn't care who saw. Or maybe she thought no one would say anything. Maybe she believed no one cared. Or maybe, and this was the part that stung, maybe she wanted me to see. To provoke me. To force the conversation I still refused to start. But I wouldn't give her that. Later, after the cake, I found myself alone on the balcony. It was cool out, the city humming below us in soft neon tones. I stood with a glass of flat soda in my hand, watching the lights blink red and yellow and white. That's when Greg came out. "Hell of a party," he said. "Yeah," I replied. He didn't say anything else at first, just leaned against the railing next to me. Finally, he added, "You doing okay, man? You seem distant." I could have lied. Could have said I was tired, or busy, or stressed from work. Instead, I said, "Ever watch a relationship from the outside and realize it's already ended, but nobody told the people in it?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've been there. She's got someone else," I said quietly, calmly. "Has for a while now." Greg turned to me, eyes wide. "Seriously?" I nodded. "I've got the receipts. The photos. The emails." "Jesus, man. I'm sorry." I shrugged. "Don't be. It's weird, but I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done." He stared at me like he didn't know what to say. "I'm not going to blow up at her," I added. "She's expecting that. That's her power play. If I lose it, she wins." Greg nodded slowly. "So what are you going to do?" I looked back out at the city. "Build the case. Quietly. Thoroughly. Then I'll end it on my terms." He didn't press. Just clapped me gently on the back before heading inside. When we got home that night, Jessica kicked off her heels by the door and asked if I wanted tea. I said sure. She made some chamomile, handed me a mug, and sat beside me on the couch like everything was fine. "How was the party?" she asked. "Good," I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad we went. It was nice to feel social again." I looked down at her and smiled. She didn't see the difference in that smile. But I did. It wasn't warmth. It was detachment. That night, she fell asleep easily. I stayed up, scrolling through the photos I had saved. Her with the man at the cafe, her arm resting on his knee, his hand tucked beneath her coat. The receipts. The travel itineraries. The emails she never expected me to see. I printed them all, organized them by date, clipped them into a folder. Then I started going through our joint accounts. Statements. Transactions. Flight confirmations. Hotel bookings. She hadn't been careful. I traced purchases made while I was away, luxury toiletries, spa appointments, charges for boutique wine shops in towns she claimed she'd never visited. There was a pattern. She had her own system, a separate rhythm. And now, so did I. I created a digital log, entries tagged by date and location. I labeled *TS. I saved duplicates to cloud storage and a USB drive I kept in my car. I wasn't documenting for revenge. I was documenting for clarity. This wasn't about proving she had betrayed me. I already knew that. It was about building an unshakable wall between what was and what would come next. I didn't want closure through words. I wanted precision. A line drawn so cleanly that even memory couldn't smudge it. Over the next few days, I stopped reacting entirely. She'd come home late, and I'd greet her with a kiss on the cheek. She'd say she was tired, and I'd tell her to rest. She'd cancel a dinner, and I'd say, "Don't worry, we'll reschedule." I was collecting. Each interaction became another piece of the puzzle. Not emotional, not volatile, just data. She noticed. One night, she asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Why? You seem calm lately. Like you're not here." I smiled. Just focused. Lots on my mind. She nodded but didn't push. She didn't want to know what I was really thinking. Because if she asked, I might have told her the truth. That her betrayal no longer hurt me. It bored me. It was predictable. Ordinary. And that, more than anything, meant it was time to move on. Once I knew I was done, really done, I started treating our marriage like a project. Not a relationship. Not something to save. A task. A file to close. Each night, after Jessica went to bed, I opened my laptop and added to a growing archive. I had folders now, organized by name, date, location. I had timestamps, *TS, transactions, receipts. I had surveillance photos. I even had backups stored offline. It was no longer about emotion. It was about preparation. She still had no idea. Or maybe she did. Maybe she sensed the shift, the way I'd stopped reacting, the way my gaze held steady even when she made excuses. But if she suspected anything, she didn't show it. That was the performance we shared, pretending. The mask she wore was one of calm domesticity. Mine was acceptance. Underneath, we were both in freefall. It was a Thursday evening when I found the shoebox. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just organizing the upstairs closet, pulling down winter coats, and sorting old linens. Tucked behind a stack of gift bags was a plain black box with no label. When I opened it, I didn't know what to expect. Inside was a second phone. My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. Just a quiet exhale, confirmation. It wasn't password protected. Just swipe to unlock. Either she was overconfident, or she assumed I'd never find it. There were over 200 messages. Texts, photos, audio clips, notes. They weren't vague. They weren't emotional. They were explicit. Plans, laughs, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Mentions of hotel rooms, sneaking around, mocking references to me. "He thinks I'm at book club LOL," one message read. Another, "You snore louder than my husband," face with tears of joy. There were photos too. One from a hotel bed. She was under the covers, biting her lip. Another of her standing in a mirror, mid-undress, holding up a peace sign like a teenager on vacation. She looked happy, free, like she belonged there more than here. I kept scrolling. I didn't feel anything anymore. One video started automatically. She was in bed, curled into the crook of a man's arm, whispering into the camera. There was no sound, but her lips formed a phrase I recognized. Something she used to say to me when we were first dating. Mine. I didn't finish the video. I didn't need to. I took the phone, connected it to my laptop, and transferred everything. I duplicated the folder, renamed it Final Evidence, and saved it across 3 devices. By then, I had everything I needed. I'd mapped the affair from start to finish. From the first receipt to the last hotel charge. I could track her movements, her storylines, her lies. It wasn't just cheating. It was choreography. And I wasn't in the dance. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. His office was cold, tidy, efficient, everything I needed to be. I laid out my evidence with methodical precision. Laptops, USB drives, printouts in labeled envelopes. He barely blinked as he sorted through it. "You've got more documentation than most private investigators bring me," he said. I nodded. I wanted to be thorough. He leaned back in his chair. "With this much detail, we'll have no problem. Especially if you want to pursue fault-based divorce. Spousal misconduct, financial deception, we can make the case airtight." "I want everything clean," I said. "Quick. Final. I don't want a drawn-out battle." He smiled faintly. "Then let's get started." He gave me a checklist of actions. Open new personal accounts, freeze joint credit lines, secure key documents. I'd already done most of it. The rest took me less than a day. By the weekend, the legal motion was in progress. The accounts were frozen. The passwords were changed. And Jessica still had no clue. That Sunday, she made brunch. Waffles. Fruit slices arranged on a plate. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted whipped cream. Her eyes sparkled. The show went on. I played my part. "Looks amazing," I told her. Later that day, she went to get her nails done. Said she'd be back in an hour. I used the time to pack up her old photos. Her gifts. Her knickknacks. The mug she kept at the sink that said, "Wifey." I wrapped it all in bubble wrap, boxed it, and labeled it with her name. I left it in the hallway, by the door. When she came back, she stepped over it like it wasn't there. She didn't ask, and I didn't explain. She stopped wearing her wedding ring 2 weeks before. Said it was getting too loose. She wore a stack of cheap rings now, nothing sentimental. I noticed. She thought I didn't. That night, I finalized the print packet for my lawyer. 50 pages. Chronological order. Photos, texts, receipts. An index on the last page. I printed 2 copies, one for him, one for her. I didn't plan to scream, or accuse, or beg. That part of me was dead. The part that wanted answers had long since gone numb. The only thing left was execution. The next morning, I slid the packet into an envelope and left it on her nightstand. I left early. Didn't say goodbye. Let the paper speak for itself. I didn't get a call. Not that day. Not that week. But she knew. Everything changed after that. Her movement slowed. Her eyes stopped meeting mine. She took longer to answer questions. She made fewer plans. One evening, she came home and found me reorganizing the living room. I had moved the couch, replaced some of the framed photos with abstract prints I bought on impulse. "Why'd you move everything?" she asked. Felt like a change. She stared at me for a long time. "Are you trying to erase me?" I looked up. "No, I'm removing the illusion." She didn't reply, just stood there, watching me. Later that night, she texted me from the guest room. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. She texted again. "I know I messed up. Can we just talk?" Still, I said nothing. She came downstairs the next morning, quiet. No makeup, hoodie and jeans. She made coffee, stood near the counter, then asked softly, "What are you going to do?" I already did it. I mean with us. "There is no us," I said. She sat down. "So that's it." "That's it." She nodded. Not surprised. Just quiet. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" she asked. I wanted to be sure. And now, I'm sure. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue. Then she stopped. "Instead," she said, "you were always the calm one." It wasn't a compliment. It was a realization. She left for work in silence. No goodbye, no performance. Just grabbed her keys and left. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around our room, soon to be my room. I'd already removed her things from the dresser. Her shoes were boxed. Her jewelry was tucked away in her closet, untouched. The only thing left was the silence. It was louder than anything she ever said, but it was also honest. The show was over. The lights were off. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living in something real, even if that something was nothing at all.